The courtroom was dead silent until the sharp crack of Judge Karen's gavel echoed through the chamber. "A man like you doesn't belong in my courtroom unless you're here to mop the floors," she said coldly. Standing before her was James Carter, a well-dressed black man in his mid-30s. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. Exactly 7 minutes later, it wasn't James in trouble, it was Judge Karen, and she was the one in handcuffs. That morning, the courtroom was packed. Judge Karen Monroe, infamous for her ruthless decisions and ice-cold stare, sat elevated in her judge's chair, wearing her robe like a crown. To many, she acted more like a monarch than a public servant. Across the courtroom stood James, calm, collected, with his hands folded behind his back. Confidence radiated from his eyes, but Judge Karen didn't see that. All she saw was his skin. "You must be lost, Mr. Carter," she sneered. "This courtroom doesn't entertain fake lawsuits from people chasing headlines." Laughter rippled through the gallery, but James didn't respond. He didn't need to. He calmly opened his briefcase. James Carter wasn't just any man. He was a Harvard-educated attorney and a former FBI investigator. Years ago, his younger brother had been wrongfully convicted, sentenced by none other than Judge Karen, despite clear, exonerating evidence. Since that day, James had given up everything, his career, his comfort, even his reputation, to bring justice to those who abuse the system from the inside. And today, he wasn't here to file a lawsuit. He was here on official business. Judge Karen flipped through the file with a mocking expression. "Let me guess. Suing the system? Playing the race card again?" James looked her dead in the eye. "I'm not here for sympathy," he said. "I'm here for justice." The judge scoffed and rolled her eyes. Typical. She had no idea what was coming next. "You people always twist the law for your benefit." The words hung in the air like a live wire. A shocked silence swept through the courtroom. James turned to the court clerk. "Is that being recorded?" The clerk gave a slow, uneasy nod. James offered a small, knowing smile. "Good." Judge Karen leaned forward, voice dripping with sarcasm. "So what fake case are you presenting today?" Without a word, James opened his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. He handed it to the bailiff. "This," he said, "is a federal warrant, signed and approved just this morning." He paused. "It charges you, Judge Karen Monroe, with obstruction of justice, judicial misconduct, and racially motivated sentencing." Laughter burst out of Judge Karen as she waved a dismissive hand. "What kind of joke is this?" Then James held up his badge. "Federal Investigator, Civil Rights Division." Gasps echoed across the room. The same people who'd laughed earlier now sat frozen, mouths agape. Judge Karen stood abruptly, the color draining from her face. This is outrageous. You can't just walk into my courtroom and—" James cut her off, voice steady and sharp. "You forgot something, Judge." He took a step forward. "This isn't your courtroom anymore." Turning to the clerk, he said, "Call in Agent Reynolds." A moment later, 2 federal agents walked through the double doors in full uniform. The tension in the room was electric. Judge Karen stumbled back in disbelief. "Wait, you're serious?" The agents approached the bench as James began reading from the warrant. "You have wrongfully sentenced over 37 black defendants. Records show a clear pattern of extreme bias. You've rejected appeals without due review, denied defendants their basic rights, and cultivated a hostile environment for minorities inside your courtroom." Karen's hands trembled. This can't be happening," she whispered. James stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Oh, it's happening." His eyes locked onto hers. "You gave my brother 15 years for a crime he didn't commit. He served 10 before he was exonerated. You ignored the evidence. You silenced the truth." He leaned in. "But your time is up now." Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. The once feared Judge Karen Monroe stood speechless, cuffed and cornered. Her voice cracked as she tried to plead. "I didn't know. I didn't mean to." James didn't flinch. "You knew exactly what you were doing. Every sentence, every insult, every life you ruined." And now justice was finally being served. As Judge Karen was escorted out in handcuffs, the courtroom erupted in applause. Some clapped with quiet tears in their eyes. Former defendants who had once stood where James now stood. Others, mothers, siblings, and families of the wrongly accused, held each other, finally witnessing what they thought they'd never see. Justice had arrived. Outside, sunlight poured over the courthouse steps where James stood, surrounded by a growing crowd and a swarm of cameras. A young black boy, no older than 9, pushed his way through and looked up at him with wide, hopeful eyes. "Are you a real hero?" he asked softly. James knelt down, his voice gentle. "I'm just someone who didn't stay silent." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. A smiling young man. He looked at it, smiled, and whispered, "This was for you, Darnell." Then he stood tall and turned toward the cameras. "To everyone watching," he said, his voice clear and firm, "never let power go unchecked. Never let hate hide behind a robe. And if someone ever tells you that you don't belong, prove them wrong." He paused. "I'm not a judge, but today, justice was served." He looked into the lens one last time. If this story moved you, comment "Justice wins" below. Share it with someone who believes change is impossible, because it isn't. And if you've ever been told you're not good enough, remember, you don't need permission to fight back, you just need courage.